unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
Well, welcome back. It's Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. This is my co-host, Ian Gibson. How are you?
Doing really good, especially after this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, in that 3:30 slot, technically out here, 12:30 slot of games, you had UCLA playing at the same time as Florida, and they both get the win in just dramatic fashion. We'll talk about those in a little bit. Let's talk about USF at first. Talking about other victories.
Yeah.
The teams that we covered went 3-0. USC did not play. So USF Friday night up against Charlotte. You know, it was a blowout, but I saw a lot of people complain because they were mad, you know, that USF didn't put up more points. They looked sloppy. A lot of drop passes from the wide receivers in the first half. Chaz Nimrod had at least 2 or 3 drops that I can remember. But they still ended up winning by 28 points. They won 54-26. This game was never really in doubt. It wasn't like Charlotte was like scoring at will in the second half. They just kind of like, you know, were going down the field and scoring because USF was kind of letting them. And their quarterback that started the game for Charlotte was terrible. And so they benched him and they came in with this guy Wilkie, who played a lot better, but he still made some mistakes. He had an interception and led to their downfall and USF closing out the game. Byram had a really great game. He had 373 yards total, 162 on the ground. He did have 2 interceptions and I believe at least 1 fumble. Did he have 2 fumble loss or 1 fumble loss?
Well, he had the interceptions. I think it was just the 1 fumble.
Okay, so he had 3 turnovers, which is not good. And there was a fumble by Isaac as well, the running back.
Isaac had 1.
Yeah, so there was 4 turnovers for USF, which is not good. And, you know, you add that with the drops, and it was just a rough game to begin with for USF. So, you know, they do get the win. I don't know. It's like I'm not necessarily like upset with how things went. It could have been better. But USF did what they needed to do. They put up 631 total yards, like 407 on the ground. Like,
yeah,
I don't know why you should be mad. 36 first downs to their 15, 9 of 17 on third down, 2 of 3 on fourth down. So they were 11 of 17 on conversions, which is well over 50%. They only punted the ball 3 times the whole game. Yes, those turnovers. And they just dominated. They looked really good. It's the first conference game so far this year. It sets up North Texas next week. You know, this was the amuse-bouche to next week's entree. And you know what? Get ready for it because it's going to be a big game. It's on Friday. It's going to be a huge focus because both those teams have CFP aspirations. And winner moves on and loser probably done because North Texas's schedule is very weak. They need to be undefeated to have a shot. And USF does have a strong schedule, but 2 losses is not going to do it. But Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, and to kind of echo what you were saying, that first quarter, fantastic. That was the best way. They had a great start. Obviously, first play, drive for them. They scored the touchdown, and then defensively came out. I think the point, and a lot of other fans were saying the same thing. And with Charlotte, we kind of knew this was a layup game. We kind of knew Charlotte was not as tough as other teams are going to play in the American. This was a very good, kind of stepping into the American because just Charlotte has been dominated by USF since they've entered the American Conference. But there was times in the second quarter and especially the third quarter where it was looking just flat out rough and bad, where you could tell they kind of took their foot off the gas pedal and just weren't focused. And it wasn't the fact that they were doing it in this game. For me, it's because I was thinking you can't do this to the rest of the schedule. You can't do this against Memphis. You definitely can't do this next week against North Texas. So that was, I think, the reason, like myself, we're kind of a little annoyed in the middle where we were just like going through the motions. And I'm like, guys, you are way better than this team. And they showed that they were way better. All the parts that were good showed how good USF can be for the rest of the year. Defensively, still been a bright spot for them. Obviously, in the fourth quarter, they were probably giving up more big plays than they were supposed to. But other than that, they just shut down Charlotte and did what they were supposed to do. Same thing with, the offense. Obviously, Brown had a fantastic game. The running game was really good too. Clearly, we had guys like Davenport, Franklin. Norton was scary. He had a good game, and that was a real shame to see how he went down. And hopefully he's okay. They said he went – I haven't looked back up on him, but he was obviously stretched it off, and they said it was going to the hospital for a precautionary. It wasn't like immediate attention, which is good news. But, yeah, like I said – with them, with the North Texas game, that's where I was annoyed, only because I'm like, you got a very big game next week, and you cannot play this sloppy against them. So good win for USF. Good way to start the conference. Obviously, it gets tougher from here next week. I will be at that game next week since I'm going to the Red River Shootout. We're going the day before to head up there. So that'll be fun. I would be saying got a little more nervous about the game when I heard North Texas started canceling classes so everybody could be at the game.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, cool. So USF is going to, have to fight a crowd now for the first time since the swamp in Miami.
Well, I mean, I still don't think there's going to be that much of a crowd for North Texas, but they are undefeated, and this is like basically their Super Bowl this year, because like the rest of their schedule, there's like nobody. I don't think they play Memphis. I don't think they play Tulane. So like, I think it's maybe Navy. I think is like their only team that they actually play. So this is it. Like,
yeah,
if they're gonna like get through their schedule, this is the game that they're circling. So I get it why they have all their eggs in one basket. You have any more thoughts on this before we move on?
No, just good win. Just kind of in the middle. There's some things they need to tighten up. Again, it's very nitpicky because they won 54-26.
Yeah.
But no, good win. They just need to make sure they don't have fall into the same trap next week.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, next game we got was West Virginia BYU. Again, BYU showing that like nobody watches their games, yet they completely run like fundamental football. And not only that, this year Bachmeier can throw the ball like 50 yards down the field. And also Chase Roberts, a name that you need to know because this kid is a blazing fast wide receiver and, looks to be, I haven't seen a wide receiver at BYU that I can remember that was as good as this kid. And this kid is, putting up huge numbers. And, in this game, it wasn't really close. West Virginia scored late there to make it look closer, but it was, West Virginia is just, I don't know what it is. They seem kind of like discombobulated. They don't know who their quarterback is. They're like, they're just not a like cohesive team right now. I think there is some like aspects to like, and I think Rich Rod maybe getting them there eventually, but right now they're just not there. But BYU is totally different because, their coach has them, fundamentally sound. Chase Roberts had 161 yards receiving. LJ Martin had a great game. Like I said, Bear Bachmeier had 351 yards. I love that he wears number 47. It's like old school football.
Bernie Kosar, Doug Flutie.
Yeah, it's ridiculous number situation with the quarterback. And, they were up 38-17 midway through the fourth and just rolling. And like for BYU, the rest of the year, they have some tough ones. They have Utah, Arizona's still kind of spicy. Iowa State, even though that loss, we'll talk about that. And then the Texas Tech game and Cincinnati and TCU. So they have a gauntlet the next like 6 weeks, 7 weeks. They have a lot of tough games. Really only 2 home games in that stretch. So that's kind of a tough road here for them. I don't envision them going undefeated through that stretch, but I can see maybe getting 2 losses, and 2 losses would more than likely get them to the Big 12 championship game. So BYU playing really strong again. You thought Retzlaff, after being kicked out of school for, the breaking the honor code, and yet they got Bear Bachmeier, who's probably even better. And the kid is just putting up huge numbers. What are your thoughts, Ian?
For this one, again, it wasn't that surprising because BYU is just a more complete team. West Virginia, obviously, they're in the middle of a rebuild right now. And like I said on the show before, I mean, they got their highlight of the year. They beat Pitt. So, I mean, you can coast on that.
Yeah.
But BYU just totally dominated this game on all facets. Clearly, Retzlaff, Bachmeier passing the ball did very well, and the running attack was good. And that 1-2 punch they have at receiver is one of the best in the Big 12. I mean, obviously, Chase Roberts, Parker Kingston as well, both had over 100 yards. I do remember, too, you want to talk about BYU wide receivers? Puka Nacua went to BYU. He transferred from Washington. Yeah. I remember him at BYU watching some Holy War games back then. But, yeah, BYU just took care of business. They took down West Virginia. And for West Virginia, obviously, it's a tough loss. But when you're having a hot potato at quarterback and, you're giving up over 500 yards on defense, it's what to expect. BYU moves forward, and obviously they're going to face, tougher opponents down the road. But, very good start to Big 12 play. Now they go 2-0.
Where did Nacua end up then if he transferred?
He started at Washington, I think the COVID year, and then he transferred to BYU, and that's where he got. Then he got drafted in like the whatever round.
Yeah, I totally forgot that he ended up at BYU at the end there. Okay, moving on to Iowa State, Cincinnati. I would have thought Iowa State would have put up a bigger fight. They got close at the end, but they were down so bad. Like in the first half, it was like 34 or 31-7. And, they had a big comeback and they got close. But Sorsby did just enough to win for Cincinnati as they were, inching back in this game. Pryor had a good game for Cincinnati. Becht looked good at times, but he struggled early and they weren't getting conversions on third down. So they really struggled to move the ball early, and Cincinnati just jumped on him quick. Credit to Cincinnati here because they didn't have the ball very long. They didn't cause turnovers. They just forced Iowa State into a lot of fourth downs, which they didn't convert. They converted more than half, but they had 3 conversions that they didn't convert. And then they punted it 3 times. So they kept them, off the field at first enough to build up a 17-0 lead. And that really kind of held through the whole game. Getting up so quickly kind of prevented Iowa State really from getting back in this game. Your thoughts on this one, Ian?
Yeah, and the reason when I was watching the game and then the highlights after, I know there was a graphic that popped up, and Cincinnati was averaging almost 8 yards a run. And you're not going to win any game on defense when that happens, no matter what team you are. If you're giving up 8 yards a run, that is the easiest thing for an offense to call, because then you can just lean on the run game and then rely on the play action passes, which is what Cincy was doing. And then Sorsby, was able to hit those guys deep. Now, Iowa State, obviously they put up a valiant effort. I'll give this. Becht, I don't think he was really having to show out himself because Iowa State's game plan was kind of what Cincy's was play balance, lean on the run, and then some play action or medium range, high percentage passes. But Beck showed, I mean, when they were like, dude, we're down 31-7, it's going to be up to you. I mean, he put up almost like 400 yards in the game, and he was very efficient. It's just, I mean, dude, you're down 31-7 in the first quarter. You just cannot let that happen. And it was very surprising for a team like Iowa State, who has such a good defense, to just get, punched in the mouth that early. And they did, they come back, and Cincy was really trying their best to really make it scarier than it needed to be. We'll get to Florida on how they did the same thing too. Took a page out of Cincy's book. But yeah, a very surprising win. That should have been the canary in the cave for how Saturday went. But great win for Cincy. They're 4-1 now. And, obviously they're 2-0 in the Big 12 play. They lost that after that loss to Nebraska, and they had that close game against Kansas. But I mean, the rest of the schedule, besides, I know they play at Utah, and then I think they play BYU, and then they're at TCU near the end of the year. But dude, like, Cincinnati can legit, because the Big 12 is now a tire fire with, like, now it's up for grabs again. Cincy could literally fall up into the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, I mean, they got an easy schedule the next 3 weeks: UCF, Oklahoma State, Baylor. The Utah game will be tough. Then BYU, then TCU. I mean, Arizona's no slouch either. So, I mean, it's a tough road the last 4 weeks of the season. I mean, they've got a little bit of an easy go of it the next couple of weeks, but we'll see. Okay, let's move on to Illinois, Purdue. Not really much to talk about this game. Purdue is not a very good team. They put up decent numbers offensively, but Illinois in the middle quarters outscored them 40-14. So it was really over by the end of the third quarter. And Altmaier had another huge game, 19 of 22, 390 yards. Beatty for Illinois, 186 yards, a TD. Just monster game from him. Pretty big game from their running back, Valentine, as well. Purdue is like, I don't know. They're not terrible. They're just like, their defense isn't very good, and their offense is like good enough, but like, it's not like they're putting up 45 points a game. And that's the problem, because if they're going to win any of these games, they're going to have to put up like 40 plus, and their offense is not that good. So is what it is. Their talent level is like, that's where it is. That's where they're capped off at. Illinois, though, like, after that huge win against USC, they're 5-1. Are they really number 7? No way they're number 7.
Are they really?
That's what it's saying here on my screen. It might be, well, let me pull this out. It might be, no, it's saying 7. How is that even possible?
Oh, no, I know.
No, they're 17. I was like, there's no way. They got smoked by Indiana.
Indiana's 7.
Yeah, it was, my screen wasn't pulling out far enough. No, so they have Ohio State next week, Washington after that, and then relatively easy after that, Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, Northwestern. They should easily win those 4 games. So really, they have 2 more games, and they really have only had 2 games to begin with, which was Indiana and USC. And I can say the Duke game was a decent test. But no, they really have 2 more games the rest of the way here, and they should be able to, like, if they go 1-1, which more than likely they should beat Washington, but it's a road game in Washington, and Washington has been better this year, so that could be a tough game. They might go 0-2 in that spread, but besides that, they're 1 loss right now. Still finished 9-3, not bad. They'd have a chance at the Big Ten championship game. They just need to win one of those games in the Washington or Ohio State game. We'll see. But your thoughts on this one, Ian?
Yeah, and with Illinois, they like ripped off like 24 unanswered points, and it was like 24-7. At that point, I was like, that might be enough, even if it's this early, because Illinois' offense can just score so quickly, which is what made the Indiana game kind of surprising. But other than that game, every time Indiana was on offense in any of their games, especially the USC game, they always had that threat of driving down the field, and if they needed to score, they could do willingly. And we saw that with Purdue. When Purdue got, some of a fight in the beginning of the first quarter, but then Illinois was really just playing with them. I think it was like, it was the 40-14 differential there. But great game for Illinois. Altmaier had another great game. So, yeah, the season's still in front of them with obviously a big game with Ohio State, and then they're at Washington. But after those two, I mean, if you only lose one of those games, and depending on how the Big Ten race goes, yeah, they're not out of it.
Yeah, they're definitely right there. Okay, moving on to Air Force Navy. This was a back and forth game the entire way. Air Force had a shot at the end. Sarka for Air Force looked pretty good. He was throwing the ball decently enough and had a monster game on the ground. He had nearly 400 yards total, 4 TDs. But the same can be said about Horvath, who had 469 yards, which is insane, and 4 TDs. And he was 20 of 26. And, who actually stands out the most is Heidenreich. This kid is damn good. Like 243 yards, 8 receptions, 3 TDs. He's a speedster. He catches the ball really well. You don't see many wide receivers out of Navy, and this guy is standing out like big time. He's definitely getting some NFL scouts to come to games. So, shout out to him, because he's dude, the kid's a stud. If you have not seen this kid, just take some highlights, because the kid's a freak. But this game was close. It was like literally back and forth the entire way. It was like tied almost like 50% of the time. Navy gets a late field goal. Like I said, Air Force had the ball late, and they just couldn't capitalize. Great game. Honestly, 517 yards for Navy, 460 for Air Force. It was basically as even as you could get. Couple of turnovers between the two, but not many. Great game overall. I mean, Air Force is not as good this year, but Navy is definitely trending towards a potential CFP spot, depending about their American Conference games. But great game overall. Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, and it was kind of like looking in a mirror with these two, especially with how both the quarterback play was. Because obviously Zarka was the one they leaned on for Air Force, both running and passing. And I think it was Fleshman was the receiver who had like over 100 yards too for Air Force. But man, when Heidenreich, he had those 3 touchdowns and almost 300 yards, and it was on that a lot of those RPO plays, because they were just expecting. That's the amazing thing with Navy's offense. Horvath's going to run it, and he'll still get 5-6 yards out of it. But yeah, it was those RPO plays that was really killer for Air Force that they couldn't come back from. And then Navy got that late field goal, and then when Navy got the ball back after Air Force had to punt it, and then they just iced it, which is what Navy does best. If it's like a close game and you need them to get 10 yards, Navy will do that in bunches, because they're always about making it third and manageable. Yeah, getting 4 yards, 5 yards a carry or a play. Make it third and manageable, because then it's way harder to stop, especially with the offensive line and with Horvath running down there too. But great game for Navy, way closer than I'm sure they would have liked it. Yeah, but with these rivalry games, you never know. Air Force, that's a really tough loss, because obviously it has not gone their way this year. They've now that's 4 in a row. They've lost because they had a close one, Boise State, and then they lost the last 2. But, I mean, they've been in these games on all these losses, so hopefully they can try to turn the ship. I'm sure there's going to be another couple wins that'll pop out here, but that would have been a really good win to grab.
Yeah, and it does leave some possibility for USF that if Zarka can make those plays, that Byram is a better version of Zarka.
Yeah.
That'll lead to one, Byram running the ball well, and then two, I think he'll be able to gash them. I don't think their DBs are going to be that great against the long ball, which I think USF kind of didn't really utilize too much in that Charlotte game, but hopefully going forward they're going to implement it more, especially a game against Navy. Okay, moving on to the surprise of the week, which we all thought that UCLA was dead in the water, but totally redeemed themselves.
Yeah, I was going to
just. I mean, I had no idea that this was coming. I really didn't. I was hoping that they would make a good showing and just like have some offense in this game. Not even like 50 points or whatever they ended up scoring. What was it? It was
42.
42. Like I was just hoping for like 24, 28, and they just dominated Penn State. Like they were like a lot of it was Nico. Like he on third downs, if it was third and long, he took off and he had a monster day. He had 128 yards on the ground, 3 TDs. He had 2 TDs passing. Just his breakout game as a UCLA Bruin. The defense did just enough. They were doing very well in the first half, and then Penn State kind of turned it on them. That blocked punt for a touchdown really kind of changed the whole complexion of the game. I think if that doesn't happen, maybe it's a different outcome. It got a lot closer. Like, Penn State had the ball with seconds left with a chance to win. So, but huge win. Skipper as the interim head coach gets his first win. Neuheisel, literally on 2 days of prep for the game plan as OC comes in. Kid's like, I don't know, 29, 30, something like that. He's a young kid.
He was quarterback.
What?
It was like 10 years ago he was the quarterback.
That's what I'm saying. So he's like 28 or 29. So like he's super young. And like he was the quarterback for UCLA. His dad was the head coach at UCLA at one time. His dad was in the studio just, going nuts about it. And it's great. It is amazing to see. It was such a like total college football moment what happened in that game, and I'm so happy for my UCLA fans because I know they are just so downtrodden. The coach got fired, the DC got fired, the OC got fired. They were just clearing house, and no one really showed up for the game. There was like barely anyone in attendance except for Penn State fans for the most part. And the students actually showed out for UCLA. And but God, it's remarkable. I'm amazed that they won this game. Penn State was a potential national champion frontrunner in the beginning of the year. And now they have 2 losses. And more than likely, that's probably it for them because that's 2 conference losses. So they're probably out of conference play. They're going to be lucky to really get into the mix for a at-large spot, which I don't know at this point. Losing to an 0-4 team that hadn't had a lead all year and that hadn't scored more than 17 points and you allow 42 does not look good to the committee. I'm sorry, my Penn State friends. But your thoughts, Ian, I want to hear what you thought about this game. You need a soundboard on your computer.
I really do. How? These next 2 games we're going to talk about are going to be kind of the same thing, but it's going to be on the preference of how.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to turn the attention to Penn State. How do you let that happen? How do you let that happen? No, be honest. How do you go from literally I'm going to be in a lot of trouble for saying this. I texted George this. I said, literally, if the whole Paterno fiasco didn't happen, this might be the worst 48 hours or 2 weeks in Penn State history.
Jeez.
You lose to Oregon, so that narrative is still there that they cannot win the big game. And now we have a new narrative where Franklin just can't win games that matter now. Like, you can't win against Oregon, who, okay, fine. You have a history, you have a bad habit of that, but Oregon is one of the best teams in the country. Yeah. UCLA, like you said, was literally a floating carcass down the river. They didn't have a coach, a coordinator. Both coordinators were gone. They didn't have anything. They didn't have fans. They did nothing. And to go out and to be down 27-7 in the first half, I don't want to hear. And I saw Franklin was like, he did take ownership of it, but then he was doing the whole thing that Mullen would love to do. He was like, you can blame, the heat, the travel. I was like, no, that's you. That's you, dude. Yeah. How do you not have your team ready for an 0-4 team that had not had a lead all season? And then you're down 20 to them, and then you have to come back. That is one of the biggest it's funny because I said that last year with Vanderbilt and Bama, but I'm like, this is almost up there because this is more of just UCLA, because we literally, since we follow this team, have been seeing them just like completely face planting this whole year. It has been beyond a disaster. It was a mess, and this is how they get their first win. And then I was thinking, like, why the hell couldn't they just do this the whole year? Because, like, clearly Penn State is better than, like, UNLV. Why couldn't they do that? Like, and they certainly wouldn't have been blown out by that. But they dodged the demons. They will have a win. They will not be – I have to do some homework. I should have done it, but I got to remember the last time a Power 4, especially with a program like UCLA, went winless, but it will not be them. And an absolutely unbelievable win, and it just a beyond shocking and devastating loss for Penn State, because now you've got to seriously question where this program's going, because this was your year. This was your year.
This was it.
This was the year.
All in this year.
I saw and I read, there's an article on The Athletic, and literally the headline, and everybody should read it too. It said, if James Franklin cannot win with this team, who can? And it's true, because on paper, this team looks really good. It should be in the running for the Big Ten championship, let alone the playoff. But now you have 2 losses, a home loss to Oregon in overtime, a god-awful loss now to a winless UCLA, and you still haven't even played Ohio State, who has been your boogeyman for a decade, in Columbus. So if those go the way we think they are, you got to really think as Penn State, what are we doing here? Yes, James Franklin is a good coach, and this is a good team, but do you want to be a great team and program on the levels of Ohio State? That's what they're probably thinking about right now, because there is no excuse for this loss. For UCLA, I know this was their Super Bowl. This was their Rose Bowl, in the Rose Bowl. And it obviously now they will not go winless, so I know they're on cloud 9. So good for them. And for Penn State, it's beyond soul searching, man. It is like DT searching right now.
I mean, I totally agree with all that. I just want to counter with my UCLA thoughts here at the end. They play Michigan State next week, Maryland. Tough one on the road against Indiana. Nebraska at home. On the road to Ohio State. Play Washington at home, and then USC in the Coliseum. So they have a chance to get hopefully 2 wins next 2 weeks. And then the Indiana game, I don't envision them winning, but Nebraska game they got a shot at. Ohio State game they should lose pretty badly. And the Washington game, I don't know. Maybe there's something there. So they have a real shot at winning at least 3 games here. So considering that they were staring down the barrel of 0-12, to potentially win 4 games would be monster. Like, it would be huge. We'll see. I mean, they've got a lot of road to go here the rest of the way. to get to see where they're going to get. But let's move on to another one of those big time upsets. Texas comes into this game, they had the loss against Ohio State, but they really didn't play anybody. They played like San Jose State and blah, 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 and Sam Houston State and some other tomato can. And it's like, okay, let's see what it's really like. Now you're playing SEC road games where you're playing on the road in Gainesville. And later on this year, you're playing on the road in Athens. And you're playing on the road, let's see where else they're playing on the road.
I know they got to play Mississippi State on the road, and that's never, with those cowbells, it's never easy.
Yeah. Okay, so they're not playing as tough of a road schedule as I thought. Still, Georgia on the road is very tough, and so is Florida. The rest of the road schedule is just Kentucky and Mississippi State, which is not that difficult. But they'll have in the next couple of years, they'll play Alabama, they'll play Ole Miss on the road, they'll play LSU on the road. They'll get some tough games coming up here in the SEC. It's not a cakewalk. It is a literal a marathon and a battle when you're playing week in and week out on these tough road environments. And the crowd was a huge factor in this game. I mean, countless false starts, delay of games. They looked rattled. Florida's defense was just in the backfield relentlessly all game long. You know what? Arch had limited time to throw, and he hit a couple of the passes to keep them in this game. But the majority of the time, he was either sacked or he was hit to the ground or hurried and didn't have enough time. The run game for Texas was non-existent. I'm talking like, let's see what it was. It was 52 total yards. Florida just shut them down. And really the only reason it was 52 was because Arch Manning would get some plays that would break down, and he'd get like a couple of huge runs. And if it weren't for that, they would have had literally nothing. Their running backs had 11 and 4 yards. So 15 total yards between the two of them. They just could not run the ball. Florida's D-line, man, I love Sapp. I love Woods. I love Gums. Shout out to all those guys. They just came with their lunch pails. They just kept coming at them. They did not give up. Shout out to the secondary. Devin Moore, huge game, interception. Great on his coverage. Kermani, struggled a little bit in this game, but I think he still played well enough to keep them in this game. He almost had an interception at the end there. And then shout out to linebackers. Miles Graham, Miles Graham is such a revelation. The kid, I know his dad went to Florida, and that's a huge reason why he's there. But it's not just because he's a legacy. The kid is a gamer. He just has the instincts. You can see it, everything that he does. He is so keyed in. When they're about to, when the action is going on in the play, he reads it every time. It is amazing to watch this kid. I'm so glad that they have good defense again. It has been such a struggle for 7-8 years for the defense, and to finally have something that is this tangibly good, it is, God, it's so nice. It really is. And it was just so difficult to watch for many years. And now it's man, this defense is it is lights out. It kept a top 10 team to 21 points. And, credit to Texas for staying with that game and staying to the very end, because it was a one-score game with, 20 seconds left, and they still had a chance. But defense just did amazing. And I haven't even talked about the offense yet, because Dallas Wilson, super 5-star, who did not play all year, comes into a game against a top 10 team with a dangerous defense that is top 5 in the country, and just destroys them. that one touchdown he had
Where he
he
tight-roped
just
on the
runs
sideline.
right
Yeah.
through the DB and then just runs through two more. He was just not going to be denied. It was an NFL touchdown. He is an NFL player already. His size, his catch, like he has everything for a wide receiver. He is the prototypical, like, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown. He is that guy. And I am so pumped to see what he does. And then you have Vernell Brown III making huge plays as well. Just monster game. And DJ finally coming back and playing as good as we know as he can. I mean, he had, DJ threw 75%, and really that interception wasn't even his fault. He just got his arm hit. And one bad throw the entire day, nearly 300 yards, 2 TDs. And he was a little dinged up. You could tell at points they showed him limping a little bit. But Jaden Baugh, again, huge game. Just, man, it feels so good to finally win again because, this year started off so rough with losses against USF, Miami, and LSU. And it was just didn't feel like it was going to be a good year at all. Not that it's going to be, because it's still only 2-3. And I think a lot of people are still upset with Billy and with how they should have actually won this game by 15 or 20 because they were in control most of it. And Billy kind of just let off the gas again and, let them into this game. But huge win, top 10 win. The swamp wasn't as swampy as it could be, but it was still a top 10 venue in the sport. And, Texas felt it. It was a great win, and it's a huge start. They have tough road to go for the rest of the year. Texas A&M undefeated in College Station next week, then Mississippi State, then Georgia. So we'll see. It's a tough stretch here, but getting this win is huge. It turns everything around. And I don't know. I want to hear your thoughts, Ian.
Hey, finally! That's what we've been waiting for!
I mean, yeah. This is the thing. I'm beyond ecstatic. I am really happy, clearly. But I'm also annoyed because if that Gator team, and I don't know if it was Dallas Wilson, I don't know if it was the, Lagway looking more comfortable even with the injury. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was them in the swamp. But if that team played like that against LSU, maybe not Miami, definitely USF, Gators only have one loss on the year. And they're looking way better. Now, that Miami game, I'd probably say, I don't know. Miami looks really good. We'll talk about them. So I'd probably say they weren't going to win that one. But it was it just clicked. And they just got out to that barnstorming start. Defense clearly rattled Manning. And I know Oklahoma next week playing them has got the book out on Manning. And it's clear that you have to get into that, you have to have that pocket collapse on him. Yep. I said Manning is a Ferrari with a bad engine because there were times he hit that deep touchdown pass, but that engine kicks in when that, pocket collapses and he just his mechanics just break down. There were so many passes where he just stopped halfway through, it looked like.
Yeah.
And Florida saw that. They clearly blitzed them because they knew that was the game plan. Get that pocket to collapse, make him either have to roll out and run, which really that's Manning's specialty because he's a really good athlete.
Yeah.
But in terms of passing, he wasn't going to burn you if you have a guy in his face, and they got on him like glue. And clearly the secondary deep was, those cover 3 packages were really, making it much tougher for him to throw. But yeah, the whole game, I was like, why couldn't we do this against LSU? Why were we this passive against USF? Why couldn't we do this? And I was like, credit Dallas Wilson was the X factor. I can't think of a better debut for a kid at wide receiver. I mean, obviously Vernell Brown set the record, ironically, this year. But that play, he caught it through the Texas guy on the sideline, tight roped, and still scored. That's unbelievable. That you can't coach that.
No.
Just a freak, absolute freak in nature right now. And it was just his first game, so the sky's the limit right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, they knew that Dallas was talented. Like, it was like not a question. Like, everyone knew he had it, but it's like to see it in person against a top 10 team with that great of a defense.
Yeah.
And he made them look bad. Like, he made that whole secondary look bad. And it was on him. Like, he basically willed this team to a victory here with that huge reception. Like, because I think that's the winning points was his touchdown. And it's like, man, I'm out of a word. I'm out of loss for words here, because it's like literally he did something that we've never seen before from a freshman wide receiver. They had never really even started freshman wide receiver that much at all at Florida. And then they're starting 2 of them now, and they're both looking dominant. And it's like, man, I'm excited for the next, little bit here with these guys. Jaden Baugh has another year, and then DJ, we'll see. Maybe he says next year, a year after that. But this offense should only just get better from here, which is like, that's what's great. It's like, I know Billy's obviously what he is play calling, but the talent level on this team, that's what has me excited. And that's why I'm like, as much as Billy's ineptitude is really bringing us down, and it's like, limiting the ceiling for this team, I still feel like with that talent level, it opens the realm of possibility. And that's why I was like so upset about the LSU game, because I felt like in that game, if DJ doesn't implode, even if he just has 1 or 2 interceptions, we probably win that game. Like, he literally gave them 10 points. If he doesn't give them 10 points, the Florida defense was stopping them for 90% of that game. So I felt like they could have won that game. The Miami game was close at the end, but it's like, really, if they just had any kind of offense in that game at all, there was none. There was literally, they had no first downs. They were not first downs. They had no third down conversions. They literally couldn't do anything all game long. And if literally they just done a little bit, just 1 or 2 more drives, a field goal and a touchdown here, they would have been up in that game 17 to 14 or 13 or whatever it was. And they might have been able to eke out a win there, but they just didn't do anything. And it was like, that's what's so frustrating. And it's like, the offense has all the talent in the world. The offensive line is clearly good, clearly makes a big enough pocket for DJ to make plays. And DJ, I don't know, they said it, that he finally had his first couple of good on good practices that he's had since last year. And it does go a long way. If you're not practicing, if you're not on time with your receivers, it's going to be a problem. And, add into the mix a guy like Dallas Wilson, and it completely changes the calculus. And now with this team, it's going to be a hard road. They have the difficult schedule. Everyone knows that. They just got to keep winning. That's just simple. All it is. If this team is going to be anything, they just have to keep winning. And it starts next week with A&M, and then it continues with Mississippi State and continues with Georgia. But
the only other thing, last thing I'll end with, I texted this to everybody too. I'm still not taking the bait, because
I'm not either, really. I'm not. I'm just more of being
Napier has a habit of this, where he gets that one big win, and then we'll face plant later. Because year 1, Utah, and then that didn't go the way we thought it should have. Year 2, he beat Tennessee, and then we didn't even go to a bowl game. Even last year, it got off to an awful start, but we ended strong. You're not going to win a championship being that inconsistent. So I'm still not taking the bait, but I'm with you. He's just has to keep winning. And I said this too. You know what would make everything better? Just make everything better if Napier just would almost cuss. just not be so like in his own head and just give play calling to somebody else, like what Saban did, giving play calling to Kiffin, having an elite coordinator when Georgia had Todd Monken. If he could just get an elite offensive coordinator and he could just sit back, do the CEO stuff that he's a good recruiter.
Yeah.
If he could just he's good at acquiring talent, just get the coaches along. But dude, he almost blew it. He was throwing the ball deep and DJ threw a pick. And I'm like, why are you you got to throw high percentage passes here or just lean on Jaden Bob. Why are you doing this? Why are you calling timeout?
Well, I mean, okay. So the timeout actually was reasonable. And there's been a lot of confusion. People need to understand what exactly happened. So with that timeout, Austin Barber's helmet came off. Because it comes off automatically, it stops.
Yeah, you're out.
The clock. Okay. So it doesn't matter if there was a timeout or not. So call a timeout, whatever. The reason they called a timeout was to get Austin Barber back on the field because it was 3rd and 3, and they were going to run to the left side, which I think they did. I'm not exactly sure. But it didn't work. But still, you want your best lineman besides Austin Barber's one of your best linemen out there, and you want him out there. So you call a timeout. The 10-second runoff, I think Texas had the choice of doing that, and obviously they declined. So that's why it didn't matter. It wasn't about the 10-second runoff. It was only about having Austin Barber out there because the clock was not going to start until the snap anyways. So I know there was a lot of confusion. Trust me, there was like everywhere I saw on Twitter, everyone was confused. I don't know why. It wasn't explained well on TV. Riddick was vastly confused. And I'm like, man, you guys are paid to do this, a lot of money, and you don't understand why they're doing this. Like, this is clearly why he was doing it. And like, I don't know, like, whatever. That's my frustration with ESPN because they, for some reason, didn't have enough people to figure that out. But
trust me, as a hockey fan, I got nothing but frustration with them. But that's a whole other story. But we can.
Okay, all right. Let's move on. Okay, so speaking of another SEC game, Alabama. I'm telling you, man, Ty Simpson is really, really freaking good. This kid, 340 yards, 23 of 31. He did have a bad interception, but 2 TDs. Jam Miller is back, and Jam Miller is the jam, just annihilating linebackers. Ryan Williams had a huge game. The Nard Dog, Jeremy. I don't know. Jeremy Bernard. But no, Nard Dog had a huge game. This team has gotten really good since that first loss. I think people kind of wrote Alabama off, and it's kind of like, well, maybe they're actually pretty good, and they really are because they dominated this game in the second half. It was a game up until halftime, and then Alabama just took over, and they kind of, took Diego Pavia out of the game, and he had 2 interceptions. They really weren't the same. Besides Alexander's big run in the first quarter, like, they didn't run the ball very well at all after that. Credit to Alabama that they could have packed it in after that first game against FSU, and they completely turned it around. And they have a rough schedule. Like, Alabama's schedule the rest of the way is ridiculous. They play Missouri next week, Tennessee a week after that, South Carolina in South Carolina, not a gimme, LSU, Oklahoma, and then finish it off with the Iron Bowl. And it's like, man, their next like 6 weeks is super packed with a tight schedule. But this is what Alabama does. They play most of these teams anyways throughout the years anyways, so it's not that different of a schedule for them. So I expect them to win at least 4 of those games, probably even 5. And so if they have one SEC loss, and that's the other thing that I wanted to mention with Florida losing to USF and to Miami, Florida only has one SEC loss. So like things like I know things can get weird, but like literally everything is on the table for them because they play Ole Miss and they play Texas A&M, the 2 undefeated teams. So like I know it's obviously not going to happen, but I'm just saying like that's how like topsy-turvy the SEC is right now because no one really is standing out for the most part. And, there are some bad teams in the SEC, but the top right now is like 5 or 6 teams for the SEC, and no one's really like standing out too much. So I don't know. Alabama, though, looked great in this game. They get the win. They had to settle for a lot of field goals, which is not great. But in a game like this, Vanderbilt's a very game opponent. You want to just win the game. You're not really caring about style points. You just want to win. So what are your thoughts, Ian?
And with how they played, because Vandy obviously came to play. This was the biggest game for Vandy, and they got off to a quick start. They went up, 7-0 and then 14-7. But the difference was that Bama didn't overlook it. They didn't shake. They stayed focused. And I think that's been the thing we've all said with the problem with Bama is you can tell the concentration and focus in these games is evident when it's the ones they lose or it's way too close. But clearly they got all their heads on right. After that win against Georgia was obviously another emotional high win, but they didn't have another letdown. It looked like it could have been, but they took care of business, and that was the biggest thing was they got the job done, and they just out-athleted Vandy. While Vanderbilt, they are a really good team. Alabama just had the better players, and having a guy like Jam Miller come back, he was Bama's X factor this game. They just couldn't stop him, and Vandy just couldn't get off the field. Now Vandy was able to force, do bend not break defense, but after a while those field goals add up, and the defense of Alabama after the first quarter was just playing lights out. And obviously Pavia was not as comfortable in the pocket and couldn't get as much done with the spy packages they were playing. But really good win for Bama. It only gets tougher from here. But I'm with you, if they maybe only lose, depending on how it is and who it is too, because I know LSU and Oklahoma, those games are at least at home. Same with Tennessee. Yeah. So they have that for them. But obviously Columbia is a tough place to play at. And the Iron Bowl, I mean, as predictable as it can be sometimes, you never know with a rivalry. Yeah. So the season's still in front of them. And yeah, Alabama, if they're clicking, they are very scary for the rest of the year.
Okay, moving on to Boise State, Notre Dame. I'm not going to stay on this one very long. Notre Dame kind of, they were kind of toying with them. They weren't dominating them, but they were, Boise State really never had a chance. Madsen threw 4 interceptions. This game was never really close. Yardage-wise, it wasn't that huge of a difference, but when you have 4 interceptions, you're really not going to really do much here. But your thoughts on this one?
And this is where Boise State is just wishing and praying they had a guy like Ashton Genty back, because that running game was clearly the engine for the Broncos last year, and having to rely on Madsen. Well, I still think he's a good quarterback, but with that defense of Notre Dame, those 4 interceptions, when you have a predictable passing offense, you know what's going to happen. And the USF did the same thing to Boise State. Just, take the legs out of the run game and then force them to beat you deep, and they just couldn't get it done. So Notre Dame gets the win. And, for Boise State, any chance they did have possibly sneaking in, falling up to a playoff spot, I think is out the window now.
Yeah, clearly 2 losses is not going to get you in. Okay, next one we had Ian, your upset special almost paid off.
I was kind of ticked. I almost called it.
It was very close. It was a shootout. I felt like it was more of a sloppy game and not much of a shootout, more of teams were making too many mistakes. And so both teams kind of kept each other in it. I don't know. It just, Miller Moss was lucky. He had one. They were in their own end zone, and he threw it right to a UVA defender. And I'm like, man, if he throws that one, they probably would have lost in regulation, but he got lucky there. He had a pick 6. And then again, Miller Moss, a big reason why he struggled at USC was because he struggles with turnovers. And really kept UVA in this game. UVA really didn't do a ton of anything in this one. They had 237 total yards. That's like nothing, but they forced Louisville into mistakes. Louisville ties it late to force overtime. Louisville gets a field goal, and then UVA gets that touchdown at the end. This UVA team, I don't think anybody saw this coming. Like, you could have polled like 90% of college football analysts, and I doubt any of them would have even like mentioned UVA as a threat for the ACC championship game. They have a weird game against Washington State next week, so whatever, that's doesn't matter to conference. They should easily beat North Carolina because North Carolina is terrible. They have Cal on the road, so that's a rough journey. Wake Forest at home. And then the last 2 weeks is Duke, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech fired their coach. So literally they only have the Duke game. And you could be seeing Virginia versus Miami in the ACC championship game. Like, at this point, it's not that far off from possibility. The only other team is Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech does not play them, so I don't know if there's like weird tiebreaker scenarios for everybody. But if Georgia Tech's undefeated, okay, because you got to remember that NC State game is not a conference game. It was because they have played each other so many years and it was not on the schedule. Yeah. They slipped it in as a game that they're playing, but it's not a conference game. So that's technically a non-conference game. So right now, Virginia is undefeated in conference play. They're 3-0. So they're technically leading the conference. Crazy. At this point, with that easy of a schedule outside of that Duke game, I don't envision Virginia losing another game. And then, I'm looking at Georgia Tech's schedule. They have a pretty easy schedule as well. They don't play Miami. They don't play Clemson. They don't play Virginia. They don't play SMU. They have Virginia Tech next week. Duke is a tough one. And that's it. And Pitt. Duke and Pitt. And like the rest of those games they should be favored in. Man, crazy. Georgia Tech and Virginia. I don't think many people saw it coming. But your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and I saw the when I was tracking the game, they popped up the graphic after the game of ACC standings. And since Virginia, Duke, and Georgia Tech have won technically more ACC conference games, they're at the top. And I saw that stat, that bracket, and I was like, man, that'd be a really, really good season for ACC basketball right there. Georgia Tech, Duke, and Virginia. That's a pretty good look for basketball. And I was like, oh, that's football. We live in crazy times. But in this game, I almost called it. And honestly, Louisville should have won this game. I'm sorry. They had almost 200 more yards than Virginia, but they just could not. And I'll give Virginia credit. They would not go away. They would not be denied and found a way to sneak the win out in overtime. But this is going to be one of Louisville is going to haunt them because they were the better team. They played better, and the scoreboard just didn't reflect it. And, this was a really tough loss for Louisville because Virginia fell into the trap. They were kind of, I'm assuming, just expecting this game. They did a good job bottling Chandler Morris and, making sure the running game wasn't as effective. So there wasn't as many play action plays that worked so well against Florida State. But for Louisville, that's a tough loss. In Virginia, I know they're counting their lucky stars. They were probably, 2 weeks in a row. They won in overtime. So they're overtime kings right now. Yeah.
This next one, I didn't get a chance to review. Can you lead the recap here? SMU versus Syracuse.
Yeah, I got it. This one. This it's kind of difficult with Syracuse, obviously with Angeli out. It was going to be tough no matter how it went. And I mean, give Syracuse credit. They didn't totally lay down and die. I mean, they had a fight in the fourth quarter, but SMU jumped out I think it was 24-3 at halftime. Jennings had a fantastic game. He had 4 touchdowns, over 200, almost 300 yards. That looked like the Kevin Jennings we knew from last year and the year before, just really kind of jack of all trades quarterback and was really explosive down the field. But with Syracuse, I mean, the offense looked good. Ricky Collins, the backup, now starter, he had a good game. Well, he was having a good game, but they picked him off 3 times. But they still relied on him. He was able to get almost 300 yards passing. But with Syracuse, I mean, yeah, that Angeli injury is really hurting them because I think if he's in this game, I don't say they win, but I think it's a lot closer.
Okay, moving on to Texas Tech, Houston. Talking about playing with your food, Texas Tech hit like, I don't know how many field goals. It was insane. Like it must have been like 6 or 7 field goals. I'm trying to see how much it was. It was,
I think 5.
Yeah, 5 field goals. And they had both of their kickers going back and forth doing stuff. So they kicked it. They kicked 7 field goals. They missed 2 of them. Like I don't think I've ever watched USF or Florida ever kick 7 field goals in my life. I know I went to a USF game, the one in Auburn, where USF like missed like 4 or 5 field goals. So it was close to that level, but still, no, just they were moving the ball at will. They just couldn't finish drives. Texas Tech, Baron Morton had a huge game, 345 yards. Jacoby Williams had 107 yards on the ground. Cameron Dickey had 98 yards on the ground, and also a long touchdown for 69 yards and a score. Houston, I don't know what happened to Wegman. He was out there for like the first half, and then Chris came in and didn't look much better. I don't know what's going on with Wegman, if he was hurt or they just pulled him or whatever. But Texas Tech gets the W. They're a top 10 team now. They're a force to be reckoned with. They're not just only a good Big 12 team. They are definitely a playoff caliber team that not only is going to get in the playoff, but more than likely should scare a bunch of the top teams. You know, this is not a team to push around. They have a great offense. Their defense is ferocious. They cause turnovers. They get, negative plays, tackles for loss, sacks. They had 552 yards of offense to Houston's 267, forced 3 turnovers. Just this team, if you do not know, Texas Tech is for real. They've put a lot of money into this team. They have a lot of transfers that came in. This is not a team to be messed with, and I think it'll show in the next couple of weeks because, they don't have a tough schedule for the most part outside of the BYU and Arizona State game. So they'll get their 2 tests. One of them's at home, the BYU game. That BYU Texas Tech game might be the biggest game in the Big 12 all year, and it might end up having a sequel as well. We'll see with this Arizona State game. I'm interested in that. And KU is not going to be that bad either. Kansas is definitely a pesky team with Daniels, so we'll see. But your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, echoing what you said, like Texas Tech, even with all the field goals, were just clearly the better team. And great win. Morton had another fantastic game. He is probably the best quarterback right now in the Big 12. And yeah, with the schedule ahead, Tech is, the force we were expecting this year. And it's pretty scary, going on how well they've been playing, especially defensively, how good they've looked. Give a quick shout out, though, to Houston. Absolutely love the Oilers throwbacks, even though they weren't allowed to wear them.
Solid.
Yeah, I was like, at least they look good losing. It's one thing I can say for that.
Okay, moving on. The big game of the day kind of turned into a stinker. Miami holds on to win 28-22, but they were up heading into the fourth quarter 28-3. Florida State gets a bunch of late scores. But honestly, okay, so I watched this game from end to end this morning, and I was fully prepared to be like, oh, Miami dominated this game. But what I saw, and I have it in my notes, that Florida State crossed the 50-yard line into Miami's territory 7 times and only came away with those like 3 or 4 scores. Now, granted, Miami's defense stiffened, but one of them was a 4th down where basically kind of a punt anyways for Castellanos where he threw the interception. But the other one that Castellanos threw was on 1st down. Yeah. If he just swallows the ball, whatever, I don't know. Like, I know Miami's going to look at this game and be like they dominated because the score was 28-3, but I felt like Florida State was moving the ball a decent amount and they had their opportunities. They just could not take advantage. Miami on offense looked very good. You know, they were Tony is definitely, as advertised, one of the best freshmen in the country. I'd say him, Dallas Wilson, and Vernell Brown III are the best freshman wide receivers out there. And, you know, I was surprised because Mark Fletcher did not have a good game. I was expecting him to have a good game. He did not. They did not run the ball well, which I thought they were going to. Carson Beck looked better at points in this game. But you know, I thought Florida State's defense was going to play better. They did not. Miami took advantage of the mistakes. They had huge plays, huge explosive plays by Tony and CJ Daniels to get them 2 TDs apiece. And, you know, Tony almost had a 3rd one that got called back. So, you know, Florida State, I think, you know, I obviously was wrong. I thought Florida State was going to win this one. So I was wrong, and I'll admit that. But I think that Miami fans are probably not as satisfied with this win because it was so close at the end and because of how much Florida State was able to move the ball at times. And, you know, the other thing, though, with Miami, though, is the rest of their schedule. They have Louisville next week or 2 weeks from now at home, Stanford at home, and then they have a road game against SMU, Syracuse, and NC State, and then they have Virginia Tech and Pittsburgh on the road. So really only Louisville, SMU, and maybe that Pittsburgh game are going to be tricky. The rest of it should be pretty manageable. Man, Miami's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 home games.
Yeah.
No, 8 home games. How is that even possible?
Non-conference.
I get it, but it's like Florida never has close to that many home games. Like, because of the Georgia situation, they're at most they have 6, you know, so to have 8 is just absurd. Okay. Your thoughts, Ian?
And with Miami's defense, they were clearly the star of this game. While Florida State, I agree with you, was definitely getting those, you know, big jump plays, and they were driving at times. Miami's defense did find a way to just completely shut it down when it counted. Once they crossed the 50, that's when they got it serious and locked down, especially those interceptions. Minus the 4th down one, because I agree, that was kind of a punt, makeshift one. But, yeah, Miami's defense came out, and they did a great job. But, man, something about the score being 28-3, I don't know what it is with teams that it just activates, like, comeback mode for the other team. Because if that 2-point conversion, if that one, you know, they had the touchdown and then they had the 2-point conversion, but if they didn't have the one earlier, they would have. It's a 1-score game. It's making a 1-score game, and I know people were kind of annoyed that, like, why are you kicking the field goal with that little time? And I'm like, you might as well do it now instead of going for the touchdown.
No, it was smart. That was the right play. Like, you kick the field goal, you give yourself, you have to onside kick.
Yeah, you needed an onside kick regardless. So, I mean, you might as well, you know.
Honestly, if I'm a place kicker and I am kicking the ball on onside kicks, I'm drilling it at a player.
Oh, yeah, like a water boy.
I'm seriously, drill it at someone. And most of the time, if you drill it at one of the guys that's the up backs that is not a hands guy, because there's probably a guy on that line that is not a hands guy, drill it right freaking at him, and it probably careens off of him and you get a shot at it. Because these little like pity pats that you're just putting it out there and like going nowhere. I mean, what I'm amazed is like a lot of times these players on the hands team are trying to grab the ball when it's going less than 10 yards. Don't. Like if it's going less than 10, let them, like if it dies before 10 yards, they can't catch it. So there's nothing they can do. So don't touch it and wait till it dies and then land on it. And that's all you do. And like there's like, I don't know, just some of the like, and I know it's a very limited play. The success rate is very low. So it's not like anything really you're going to bank on. But no, it is what it is. I felt like it was the right call. Hit the field goal. Give yourself a shot. They had more time there because of that. They needed to do more in the beginning of the game. They got that field goal on the first drive, and the scripted drive went well for Gus Malzahn. I'm not the biggest fan of Gus Malzahn, and like I knew this is kind of potential as well, and I should have calculated that in because it's like, you know, Gus Malzahn is always good for one of those games throughout his career where he'll beat a ranked team and they'll surprise him, and then he just falls back down to earth and gets beat by other teams. And he's just, I don't know, he's just not as good as like people think he is because, and I think a lot of people do realize he's not as good because he will dominate against inferior talent. That is no question. And then he'll get like an occasional one or two big victories against good teams. But for the most part, his whole career at Auburn was mediocre. And, outside of the 2013 year. And then at UCF, he had a lot of terrible years where he just really couldn't do anything. And it's just, he's just not a good coordinator. He is capable of dominating it, like when they have a talent imbalance, but that's it. Like when it's a normal talent, when it's like an average, like talent on talent, he cannot make a difference there. So you have any more thoughts before we move on?
In the end, I mean, as close as Florida State was making it, Miami just kind of outclassed them. And it did show that Miami was the better team, and they didn't fall into the snake pit at Doak Campbell. That was their first time they beat Florida State when Florida State was ranked at Doak Campbell since 2009. So they break that trend. And yeah, Miami officially now is state champs because they've now beaten Florida and Florida State.
Well, good for them. Okay, moving on. Mississippi State, Texas A&M. Texas A&M, a sneaky good team that has beaten Notre Dame, has beaten Mississippi State now. They are surprising a lot of people because I don't think people thought they were going to be as highly ranked as they are, and they're number 5 in the country right now. This game, not really close the whole way through. Marcel Reed, did enough to win this game. Didn't really didn't really have moments of like worry. He didn't throw for a ton of yards, but Le'Veon Moss wasn't even in this game. Reuben Owens comes in, has 142 yards on the ground. And I think it was really because A&M's defense really looked stout, and they really made a ton of plays to really keep Mississippi State out of the end zone. And they forced 2 turnovers, won the turnover battle. Shapen looked, just kind of average. A&M, Le'Veon Moss did play, actually. I thought I maybe heard while I was watching the game them saying not hearing from him, but maybe he just got hurt or something. But either way, this A&M team is for real. They have a really good defense. They have a good enough offense to score 20 plus. And I think that's good enough in probably every game they play because I think they can keep opponents to less than 20 points. Your thoughts, Ian?
And the defense especially has been the most impressive part of A&M, even though there was a shootout against Notre Dame. But for the rest of the year, A&M's defense has been amazing. And you're right, the offense does enough when it matters That's the thing. They're like the most timely offense. I mean, yeah, Reed, he didn't. I don't even think he broke 200 yards, but I mean, he had the 2 touchdowns. Concepcion got the 2 haul-ins, and then Ruben Owens, yeah, it was over 300 yards on the ground, and the ground game has been fantastic for A&M. But it's been a very timely offense. It shows up when it matters. The defense comes through when it matters. It's a very timely team. So yeah, they took care of business against Mississippi State. Mississippi State clearly just couldn't get anything going that whole game, and it was just they got the shape in a lot. The blitz packages they had were really, getting to the backfield much quicker than what Tennessee or even Arizona State was throwing at Mississippi State. So good one for A&M. They remain undefeated, and now for Florida, they got to go like, oh God, now we got to play them in College Station, and they're undefeated, and against a really good defense again. So not the best feeling in the world.
Yeah. Okay, Ian, I'm gonna let you handle this last one.
So my Group of 5 team of the week was actually, ironically, my game of the week was in Conference USA. It was Western Kentucky and Delaware. That game was absolutely a phenomenal game, and Delaware looked like they were going to pull it off. They it was down to that field goal to tie it, but missed, didn't work. In Western Kentucky wins. I snapped like an 18-game win streak for Delaware at home. It was some insane thing, but now Western Kentucky now it's really up and for them to kind of run away with Conference USA, because the rest of their schedule, other than they play Florida International, which is a very winnable game. They're at La Tech, which that's a tough road game, but New Mexico State, Middle Tennessee, they can win these games. So that was definitely the toughest one. And for Delaware, that's kind of your welcome to college football moment. That's your first heartbreak in Division I. But for me, Western Kentucky is my team of the week.
Nice. All right, so you can find us at haterradio.com. For all of the socials, type in Hater Radio, comes right up. Ian, what is your handle again?
Yeah, at Twitter, it's at G5Gibson, and at Instagram and YouTube, it's at G_Gator_G.
Okay, that's the show. Sorry we were late today. Had some things. I was slow getting everything ready, and we were able to get it to going at like 5:20. So forgive us for that, but we're normally at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on Wednesdays and Sundays. Check us on Wednesday for our preview show. And after next week, we'll officially be halfway through the season, which is kind of crazy. We've already gotten halfway through, but I'll talk to you guys then, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. See you guys.